The first time I heard him, I was eating cereal at 11:52 p.m. and feeling sorry for myself for no specific reason. Just that low-grade loneliness. The kind that doesn't have a name or a cause. The kind that just sits on your chest on a Tuesday night. I found the podcast by accident, some algorithm rabbit hole, and the episode was already halfway through when I hit play. He was talking about driving alone at night and how the radio sounds different after midnight. Nothing deep, nothing that should have made me stop what I was doing, but his voice had this quality to it. Low, unhurried, like he was talking to one person and didn't care if anyone else was listening. I finished my cereal, then I started the episode over from the beginning. His name was just Marcus. No last name, anywhere on the show page. The podcast was called Later Than You Think, and it had maybe 400 followers on a good day. He uploaded whenever he felt like it, sometimes twice a week, sometimes you wouldn't hear from him for 3 weeks, and there was no explanation, no social post, just silence. And then suddenly, a new episode at 1 a.m. like nothing happened. The episodes were just him talking about insomnia, about bad decisions he'd made in his 20s, about the particular kind of sadness that hits on Sunday evenings when the weekend is technically still happening, but you already feel it ending. He talked about his grandmother's house once, a whole episode, and I had to sit with it after it was over because it felt too familiar in a way I couldn't explain. I started listening every night before bed, then during my commute with one earbud in, then while cooking dinner. My phone propped against the coffee maker, his voice filling my kitchen while I made pasta I didn't really want to eat alone. My roommate Danny noticed before I said a word about it. "Who are you always listening to?" "A podcast." "You're smiling at your phone." "I'm just listening, Danny." She gave me a long look and went back to her laptop. She had this talent for making a point without finishing it. Here's what I didn't tell Danny. He had a contact email listed at the bottom of the show page, one of those generic ones. And after about 6 weeks of listening, I used it. I told him I'd found the show by accident and that the episode about his grandmother's house was the most honest thing I'd heard in a long time. I wasn't expecting a reply. It felt more like leaving a note under a painting in a museum, something you do because you need to, not because you think anyone's coming back to read it. He replied in 4 hours. That episode took me 2 months to actually finish recording. Thank you for hearing it. We went back and forth over email for a week or two. Then he said email felt weirdly formal and asked if we wanted to move to DMs. I said yes before I could talk myself out of it. The conversations got longer. Then they got easier. We stopped talking about the podcast and started just talking. His insomnia, my job that I was slowly becoming miserable at, books we'd both read, what we thought happened after you died, the kind of conversations you usually only have at 2 a.m. with someone you've known for years. I never asked what he looked like. He never offered. Danny thought the whole thing was off. You're emotionally attached to someone you've never seen. We talk every single day. That's actually the concerning part. People fall for people they've never met all of the time, and then they meet, and one of them is a catfish, and the other one ends up on a true crime podcast. I laughed, but I did think about it later. Alone. Not in a scared way, more like a wistful, slightly melancholy way. I'd built this whole version of him in my head. Not even physically. I mean, emotionally. I thought I understood who he was because I'd listened to 60-something hours of his voice. Because he texted me at midnight saying he'd eaten crackers for dinner and felt completely fine about it. Because he never seemed to be performing anything. That was the thing. He never tried to impress me. Not once. Most people you talk to, you can feel them trying, shaping what they say, angling it. He just said whatever was true and let it land however it landed. It was the most relaxing thing. I started looking forward to his name appearing on my screen more than I looked forward to most things happening in my actual physical life, which probably should have told me something. I started to depend on it in a way I didn't fully admit to myself until later. November came. The heat in my building went out on a Wednesday night, and my landlord stopped answering after the second call. I ended up sitting on the front steps in my coat because it was somehow less cold outside than in my apartment, which made no sense, but here we were. I was texting Marcus about it, complaining, mostly, just to have somewhere to put the frustration. He replied fast. "Which building are you in?" I told the address without thinking much of it. There was a pause, longer than his usual pauses. "I think we might live in the same building." I read it twice, then I actually laughed out loud, alone, on the steps, in the dark. I typed back, "Sure you do." "I'm serious. 4th floor." "What floor are you?" "3rd," I said. "Look up." I looked up. 1 floor above me, leaning with both arms on the railing and looking down at his phone, was a guy in a gray sweatshirt. He looked up at the same moment I did. We just looked at each other for a second. I don't know what I'd pictured exactly. I'd tried not to. But he was taller than whatever vague shape I had imagined, with his hair a little grown out and this expression on his face that I still think about. Not quite nervous, more like someone who had been waiting for something to resolve, and it finally was. "Hey," he said. His voice, that voice, the one I'd heard through my headphones 100 times, in my kitchen, on the subway, in bed with the lights off. Now it was just out in the actual air, coming from an actual person standing 1 floor above me on a fire escape in November. My brain kind of stalled. "Hey," I said back. Incredibly useful response. He came down the stairs slowly. We stood at the bottom, and he told me he'd recognized my name when I first emailed him months ago. He'd seen it on the mailboxes in the lobby, one of those old buildings where the names are still on little paper strips. He'd wondered if it was me. Then we kept talking, and it got harder to say, and then more time passed, and it got even harder, and at some point, he couldn't figure out a version of telling me that didn't sound strange. "So you just never said anything?" I said. I didn't know how to say it. "For months?" "Yeah." I looked at him. He looked back. He didn't make excuses or try to explain it into something better than it was, which was honestly exactly what I would have expected from him. I thought I might be annoyed, part of me maybe was, but I was also standing outside in the cold, looking at the persons whose voice had kept me company through the loneliest stretch I'd had in years, who had heard things about my life that I hadn't told anyone I actually knew in person. And mostly what I felt was something I couldn't name cleanly. Not quite relief, not quite disbelief, something in between. I cried during your episode about the drive-in, the one about being 17. "I know, you told me that." "You were upstairs when I told you." He nodded. I was upstairs. We stood there in the cold for another few seconds. My nose was running. It was not a romantic moment in any cinematic sense. The heat in my apartment is still broken. Mine is working. If you want to come up, I did want to. We went upstairs and sat in his kitchen and drank tea and talked until almost 3 in the morning, easy and comfortable like we'd been doing it forever. In a way, we had. His apartment had exactly 1 good lamp in the corner, warm light, everything else dim and quiet, and it was so perfectly consistent with everything I had imagined that I almost said something about it. I didn't. Some things you just let be true without pointing at them. I didn't go back to the podcast after that. Didn't feel like I needed to. The voice that had been in my headphones for months was just there, making tea, asking if I wanted more, telling me about the time he'd locked himself out of the apartment in January wearing only socks, the story getting funnier the longer he told it. I thought about all those nights I'd listened to him in the dark and felt less alone, how I'd never imagined I was being less alone just 1 floor down from where it was coming from. There's something kind of funny about that, and kind of beautiful if you let it be. I let it be. If this story stayed with you, you're not alone. Follow for more like it. New stories every week. Like, subscribe, and come back.